busting. Many brothers I be sparking and rusting, man, like inside the dark, call me Bill Snatcher. Just a brother for the rapture. I hang live, holding on strong, hard to capture. Extravagant, resurrect the track and it's militant. And I react like a convict and start killing. It's manifested. The gods work like appliances, dealing in my sacred life.
The release of Boruto Chapter 62 right around the corner, I think it's time for us to begin a very real conversation about the major elephant in the room in regards to the characters of Code and Sasuke Uchiha. Anime only fans, this is going to be your warning to click off of the video because a lot of the content in this video is going to be discussing stuff that takes place in the manga. So before you leave, make sure to smash the like button in order to keep Himawari smiling. And due to the serious nature of this topic, Himawari is going to need all the likes that she can get in order to keep her from frowning. Now, with that being said, if you're still here, I'm assuming you're all caught up with the manga and you do not care about any discussions that deal with spoilers, so diving right into the actual topic, we've got to discuss the possibility of Sasuke Uchiha versus Code happening in one of the upcoming Boruto manga chapters, and I want to do something dangerous. I want to discuss why, from a literary craft perspective, keyword, a craft perspective, Sasuke Uchiha dying and how it could work if it was done correctly. Keyword, done correctly. Based on this latest Boruto manga chapter, we've got a very real possibility of Sasuke being the one that runs into Code. Sasuke openly stated that if he was the one that was leaving behind those claw marks that Code had, that he would have only left these particular marks as a distraction, going so far as to tell the Jonin outside the village that this wouldn't be his ideal entry point, and it says a lot given the fact that Sasuke has genius level planning. Now, for Sasuke to take one look at those straps and realize that this was a decoy and then turn around and leave, narratively, the only thing that makes sense is that he's headed to scout locations where he himself would have put those same straps if he was in Code's location, and he was planning to do a stealth attack on Konoha to take Kawaki and Boruto. In the time since then, we've seen Code emerge from those claw marks that are in the forest outside of Konoha, and Code is currently en route to catch Kawaki, who is headed west from the Land of Fire. To say that Sasuke doesn't stumble across Code, it isn't something that's crazy because the seeds have already been planted for that confrontation to occur. But where we run into a problem is that Sasuke is on that list of people that Code wants to kill, and right now the only person who's exempt from that is Kawaki due to Ada wanting to have relations with Kawaki. If these two characters meet, Sasuke is likely going to attack first. Now, Sasuke falling in battle to Code works symbolically for a few reasons. One of the reasons is that in part 1 of Naruto, Sasuke had lost his way and was stumbling off the correct path and into the darkness. He emerged from his final battle in part 1 victorious and was willingly walking into the shadows to seek power. We're now 19 years going on 20 years in the timeline removed from that moment when Sasuke left the village. Only now Sasuke's no longer lost. He's no longer stumbling in the darkness. He's back on the correct path, and instead of seeking power inside the darkness, he's now wielding the power that he's acquired over the years to protect the village from the shadows. Sasuke falling in battle almost 20 years in the timeline right before a time skip, being in the exact opposite role of where he was 20 years ago, is something that is very poetic. The last time skip was set up for Sasuke leaving for selfish reasons, and this time skip could be set up by having the final battle be where Sasuke falls for selfless reasons. It's going to be a complete 180 for the character. Now, before I go further, I want to say that if this is indeed the route that the story goes, it has to be handled with delicacy. This is less about the reaction of the fandom, where the mere sight of Naruto and Sasuke losing to Jigen took the fandom from being at DEFCON level 5 and it being ramped up to DEFCON level 3, where fans were threatened to burn up their manga volumes and drop the series altogether, knowing all well that that was capped because they still know what's going on with the Boruto franchise now. However, killing off a legacy character is something that Masashi Kishimoto said that was on the table back in 2017 when he said that no character from the old generation is safe. That's something that has to be handled with a lot more care than the scene that you had with Kurama, and I'll explain why. So in short, killing off a character is an art form when it comes to writing. It takes true talent for a writer to kill off a character, or in this case, with a manga, it takes true talent for a mangaka to be able to convey those emotions when that character dies. and for it to be well received and the impact on the fandom for years to come, it has to be done correctly. I've mentioned a few times in passing that I do have history working as an editorial assistant. I'm well versed in literature, and for this part of this video, I'm going to take my hat off as a fan, and instead I'm going to look at this from the scope of somebody who has those years of experience and studying literature in general. Like I said earlier, killing off a character, it takes real skill, and it has to be done correctly. All of us would likely agree to something like that. However, I'm going to explain to you why it's not as easy as character 1 meets character 2 and character 1 kills character 2, or character 3 surprises everyone and kills characters 1 and 2. That's the most basic cookie cutter way to put it, and a lot of shonen tend to fall into this trap if they even have the balls to kill the character off as well, because a lot of shonen are too scared to kill characters off. Now, death isn't mandatory for a series, but deaths when done properly can go a long way towards giving a real sense of danger and causing a new or different character interactions to sprout up between members of the main cast. Characters who might not have interacted in the past before, a death shakes up the story enough that it forces them to have interactions and it forces them to respond to the change in the story. The whole point in a character's death, especially a beloved character or a character that we've seen undergo true character-defining change, is to convince the reader that they've truly lost something precious. Yes, people read to escape from the real world, but a good writer understands that part of the journey for readers is the peaks and valleys that come from going on this journey with the main cast. The buildup of a beloved character, seeing their character grow in response to a pressing moment that defined their character, the feeling of rooting for them not to lose, and then that very moment where the reader has their heart ripped out is an experience that, when done correctly, can elevate a story from being an average story to being a truly great and memorable story. As a writer, it's important to remember that there's more to telling a good story than just writing point A starts the story off, point B is the climax, and point C is the resolution. A good writer knows that you're chasing emotional investments in the readers that allow you to pay it off by creating big moments. You're chasing that series-defining moment with the reader where they remember exactly where they were and how they felt the very first time that it happened. The more well done that the build-up for that moment is, the better the payoff is, which means that the bigger the moment you created leaves a bigger impression on the reader. A good example of this I'm going to use two. So one example would be from Tokyo Revengers, how you had the death of Baji and how that was handled. He wasn't in the manga for a long time, he wasn't in the anime for a long time, but his death was still something that was truly impactful. A better example is how you saw in Demon Slayer with the Mugen Train arc. We didn't spend a lot of time with Rengoku prior to that arc, but during the Mugen Train arc, the character was built up just enough and his interactions with the main cast were done well enough that the build up to his death battle where he would eventually lose his life, it hit home hard. It was a perfectly crafted crescendo. You watch the character give his all and have that fleeting moment where you believe that he could win, and then the author ripped your heart out and broke it in so many pieces that when people experienced it for the first time, especially in the movie format, it was a beautiful way to say goodbye to a character, and it checked all the prior boxes while also not disrespecting the character. As a writer, it's important to remember that for as attached as you are to your characters, if they've been written correctly, your readers are even more attached to those characters than you are, despite the fact that you created the characters. That feeling of loss will be felt doubly so by your readers if the death is carried out in a way that is handled correctly and is handled with delicate care. When done properly, sacrifice from a beloved character or a character with importance to members of the main cast, it leads to a more enthralling and engaging story. It makes the payoff of when the hero triumphs feel like it's that much more earned, because the reader will know that it did not come without heavy sacrifice. Especially if the death of a character robbed the hero of the story, something truly precious that they wanted. Heavy emotional consequences in the hand of a skilled writer are an author's best friend when telling a story. A skilled writer knows how to craft a character death in a way that it does two important things. It gets in very specific investment and it gets a very specific reaction from the reader, which is it gets the reader to compare how the world is versus how they wish that the world was. A skilled writer knows how to use the medium of a story that the reader is using to escape and make them ponder that very question. The impact of a character's death creates that moment in the reader's mind where they imagine how things could have been if that character survived. It's why execution matters, especially in the case of a character of Sasuke Uchiha being killed off. It's not just enough to kill off a character to show off how strong the new bad guy is. That's the bare basic form of storytelling that too many shonen fall into the trap of. The truly great stories know how to have a narrative lead up to the death to where it creates a true sense of loss for the readers and the characters in that story that are being left behind. The impact of a death on characters that the deceased had relationships with, that loss of desirable outcomes that they long for, which are now unfulfilled dreams or dreams that have to be entrusted to another to carry out. We know based on Naruto Retsuden, the 7th Hokage in the Spiral Destiny, which is a light novel set in the Boruto era, that Hinata has a line where she tells Sasuke that if Sasuke was to lose his life, that it would cause Naruto a great level of pain that she did not think Naruto would ever be able to recover from, especially if Sasuke died for the sake of Naruto. Sasuke dying would bring out a different side of Naruto, who is only weeks removed from having lost Kurama and being told that his son is quickly being erased from existence by being Momoshiki's vessel. For Sakura, it would be knowing that her soulmate would never again return home to Konoha, that her worst nightmare had occurred, which is her husband dying in service of the village. For Sarada and Boruto, we get more impact in this death because readers will have been robbed of those interactions. Sarada, in various light novels and scenes in the anime, has made it no secret that she desperately wants to be trained by her father on a more extensive level, which is why the training that Sasuke gives her in the Sasuke Shinden, the Teacher Star People light novel, gives us some of the happiest moments that we've ever seen from Sarada as a character. The death of her father robs Sarada of that future bonding with Sasuke. It robs her from being able to hear about the truth of her clan from her father's mouth. And her father dying in service of the village that Sarada wishes to protect as Hokage one day. Sasuke's death will unlock the Mangekyo Sharingan that will give her the power to make her Hokage dream a reality. For Boruto, the cost is a lot weightier depending on how it's done. If Boruto doesn't tell anyone that Kawaki left and Boruto happens to be the one that stumbles across Sasuke's dead body, Boruto is left to live with that guilt. He has to ask himself several questions. What if I told someone what happened? Could Sasuke have lived at that point? Boruto would have to see firsthand what it means to be the protector from the shadows, and that it comes with the expense that you likely die in service of your village, something that Sasuke told Boruto before the Ishiki battle, that he was willing to die at a moment's notice to protect the village. It would also explain why Boruto has Sasuke's sword in the time skip, which has been confirmed by Boruto's character design sheet from episode 1, and why Boruto also has Sasuke's cloak. The boy with the dreams of being the protector from the shadows, carrying the sword of his mentor to protect the village. He now keeps the cloak of his mentor around him as if to keep his sensei's arm wrapped around him for protection and guidance, and he wears the headband as a memento to Sasuke. Most importantly, Boruto would have been robbed of getting more extensive training from Sasuke. While I do think it's likely that we get one more short training arc of Boruto and Sasuke, the notion that this has to happen because it's something that happened in Naruto, and that means that Boruto's going to directly repeat it is stupid. But getting off my soapbox, I will say this: Sasuke, by Kishimoto's own words, was only handpicked to be Boruto's sensei by chance. It wasn't something that was his big idea that was planned out. Kishimoto felt that Sasuke didn't get enough screen time in the movie Naruto the Last, and he suggested that Boruto's teacher be Sasuke to rectify this. As much as people dislike this, between the training and the tuning exams and the training that's occurred off-screen in the light novels, the same way that Sarada's Sharingan happened off-screen in the light novels, and other moments that were mentioned in passing in the Boruto anime that directly tie back into those novels, we've seen roughly the same amount of one-on-one training that Jiraiya gave to Naruto. Yes, there was a 2.5-year time skip where Jiraiya trained Naruto, but in the manga, it all happened off-screen. So if we get a training arc with Boruto and Sasuke, it's likely going to happen off screen as well. However, all that's irrelevant. Training arc or no training arc, there's still enough emotional loss there to impact Boruto as a character, but it comes down to execution. You can't make the same mistake that Kishimoto and Ikimoto made when it came to killing off Kurama. They relied on prior development of Kurama through the 700 chapters of the Naruto manga, 710 chapters if we count Naruto Gaiden. There was some subtle foreshadowing, like Momoshiki saying Naruto can't pass on his power to the next generation, with Momoshiki specifically calling Naruto a fox. box. But the fact is that Kurama busted out Baryon mode and revealed the death comes in exchange for that power. It wasn't handled the best, especially the fallout. It came right on the edge of being a gut-wrenching scene, but it didn't hold the same weight as some of the other deaths that you had in Naruto's manga. And part of the blame for that is the lack of emotional fallout after that death. A breath was taken and we moved on. You had more when it came to the death of Neji. You even got to mourn for Neji twice. Once when Neji died, I think in chapter 614, and then later again in chapter 699. If Sasuke dies, it needs to go through the above outlined stages: the build up, the fleeting moment of hope, having the heart being ripped out, the emotional impact on readers, the emotional impact on the characters, and it needs to fundamentally change the story to some level for it to work. Otherwise, it's disrespectful to the characters and fans will not accept it. It has to be something closer to when Spider-Man was killed in the comics to pave the way for Miles Morales. In that story, Spider-Man went out in a beautiful way that was true to his character, and it was heart-wrenching for fans, but his death directly inspired his successor. Done right, Sasuke's death could do something very similar for Boruto and Sarada. However, that's gonna be it for my video today. So my question to you guys is, if Sasuke does die, how should Sasuke die, and what anime death left the biggest impact on you, where you still remember to this day where you were when that character died and how you felt when they died? For me, a couple off the top of my head are Jiraiya from Naruto, Kakashi when Kakashi died in the Pain arc, and Kikyo's death in the Inuyasha series. However, as always, guys, if you like anything I had to say, don't forget to comment, rate, subscribe, and share. Thank you so much for watching until the end. Have an awesome day, guys.